Okay. So for this grammar tip, what we're going to be taking a look at is mechanical errors regarding quotations, direct quotes. So this isn't paraphrasing. If you haven't seen the direct quotation and summary or paraphrasing summary videos, excuse me, you may want to go back and watch them after this just to kind of refresh yourself or to get a little bit more in depth, because I'm not going to go real in depth here. I'm just going to show you some issues that people tend to have when they're actually putting physical quotations into their work. All right, so many of you are probably not familiar with Virginia Woolf. She was a British author, primarily during about a period about 100 years ago to about 90, 80 years ago, so around the 1920s, 1930s. She tragically died by her own hand rather than seeing the Nazis take power in Germany. She was very scared of the Nazis. I only know this because my wife spent last semester taking an entire course on her over at U of L. So anyway, this is a famous quote from Virginia Woolf, and actually contains the title of one of her more famous books in there, Room of One's Own. But essentially what you have here is a quote that is saying, "A woman must have money and a room of one's own if she is to write fiction," argued Virginia Woolf. So, all in all, good quote. I mean, if you're going to put it into a piece of writing, especially about feminism or the advancement of female writers or things like that, this is definitely a great quote to have. I mean, very well respected and just well thought of author and a feminist. So the quote itself, you know, in terms of its content, isn't the problem. The problem is a lot of times what students forget is if you start a quotation, wherever there's one of these double quotes right here, there needs to be two. And we don't have that anywhere here. We start a quotation, but then we never close it at any point. So what we need to do is figure out, when does the official quote from Virginia Woolf stop? And that would be right here, because we have argued Virginia Woolf afterwards. So that's our language. This is her language. So what we need to do is make sure that we include our quotation marks on the outside of this comma right here. So it needs to go inside the quotation marks. Too often what you will see is the quotes like that, and then way out here you'll see a comma or a period or something like that. Punctuation, unless in very rare and very specific circumstances, always goes inside your quotation marks, and then make sure that you finish off with a period at the end. All right, there are exceptions to this, but they are so rare that I'm just not gonna go into them on a basic grammar video or anything like that. So when you have one double quote, you need to close that double quote. Don't forget, because a lot of times it's easy when you're in the flow of writing to go ahead and just plow right on through and not close that quote. It's not going to cause you plagiarism issues necessarily or anything like that, depending on the teacher, but it will definitely stand out to anybody that's grading that. So just be aware, one of the things you want to look for when you're reviewing your work is to make sure that anytime you start a quote, you finish a quote, and that any punctuation that you want to attach to that goes within. So for example, let's say this was the other way around. let's say that instead of ending with Virginia Woolf, let's say we start with her. So, all right, so Virginia Woolf argued, and we have our quotations there, because we're introducing a quotation, much the same way that we finished it down here. You want a comma right there. Virginia Woolf argued, comma, and then we're going to go into our quote. But because this one is going to end the sentence, we're going to put a period right here, and then our double quotes outside of the punctuation. So our punctuation stays on the inside of the quote. That's the end of the sentence, and you can feel free to move on to the next one. All right, so just make sure that whenever you're dealing with double quotations, you close them and make sure that the punctuation goes inside. All righty, I will see you in the next video.